Check, check, one, two. Check, check.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. The location obviously has been changed to the Miners due to the fire at City Hall. I will call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. The time is 9 a.m. We have two councilors on remote. And Pam, would you please take the roll call?
Baraboo. Friedlieb.
Present.
Paulson. Beyondich. Beyondich. Johnson.
Here.
Baranzelli. Cuffey.
Present.
Did Maya give a heads up? Okay, she's not on it. Okay, so right. Okay, let us know when she jumps on. Thank you. Okay, we have a full agenda today. We hope to get through this as quickly as we can, as efficiently as we can. We have appearances, finance, street and alley, personnel, building and grounds, and other items of concern. This meeting is being live streamed, and we have our staff from our audiovisual here to take care of that. So without further ado, I'll turn this meeting over to our City Administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is an appearance from Mr. Greg Knutson of Walker, Giroux and Hani regarding our 2019 audit. If you want to come up to the podium, Greg.
Good morning, Greg, and I see that the package you have in your hand is a lot thinner than it was last year, so hopefully, welcome to the council meeting. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, everybody, for inviting me. Okay, thank you. Okay. As Britt had mentioned, we're in the process of finalizing the year-ended 12/31/19 City of Virginia audit. We did send a draft copy, and we're just all but having it finalized. I'm going to talk about some of the results as they are right now, according to the preliminary finals. The financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, which is an unmodified opinion. That is the highest you can have. There was two restatements from the 12/31/18. One of them related to GASB 84, which changes the agency fund to a custodial fund. And there also was a prior period adjustment in the Public Utilities Enterprise Fund, which included the cost of disposed capital assets that are in 18 that were restated, and that was by $599,000. There was 15 adjusting entries, 3 reclassifying entries, and 5 government-wide entries. And all these are normal type entries, and it's all considered normal and nothing out of the ordinary in those areas. As far as the government-wide financials, the governmental funds started the year at $12,554,000, had an increase of $332,000, and ending the year at $12,886,000 in net position, and that includes full accrual on everything. Of that amount, just under $24 million is net invested in capital assets, $4.9 million in restricted, and $15,480,000 deficit of unrestricted net position. A lot of that has to do with OPEB and net pension liability. Moving on to the business type activities, which is the basically your enterprise funds, but this is a snapshot of all of those type. Started the year at $129,527,000, a net decrease of $6.1 million in net position, ending the year with $123 million. $80,345,000 of that is net invested in capital assets, $870,000 restricted, and $42.2 million unrestricted, giving you the ending of $123 million in business type activities. Moving on to the governmental funds. The general fund had a $265,560 deficiency of revenues under expenditures, and they also had a net transfer out of and a small sale of capital assets of $344,000. So the general fund's net change in fund balances decreased by $610,000 during the year, from $7.7 million to $7,145,000. The other major fund governmental is the ambulance special revenue funds, and that had a loss revenues under expenditures of $312,000. There was also a sale of capital assets of $8,590. So in total, the ambulance special revenue fund, the fund balance is decreased by $303,000. And moving on to the other governmental funds, we actually had a deficiency of $1.3 million in expenditures over revenues, but part of that had to do with there was a capital leases issued of $1.3 million, and also another bond issue of $312,000, and net transfer in of about $100,000 in those funds. So the total other financing using sources of $1.7 million resulted in net change in other governmental funds fund balance of $765,000, resulting in total governmental funds fund balance decreasing by $450,000 to $16. Looking at the general fund specifically as compared to the budget, the final budget of revenues was $12,637,000, and the general fund's total revenues $13,671,000, resulting in a net revenues over the budget of over $1 million, $1,033,000. The expenditures had a budget of $13.4 million and the budget 13.9. So the expenditures were over the budget by $435,000. And in total, as compared to the final, counting transfers and everything, the budget was within $8,647,000 for the general fund, which is really spot on. That's really incredible to get that close for the year, where you budgeted to lose $601,000 in that fund, and you actually lost $610,000. That's the $8,847 budgetary figure at the general fund. At year end of the governmental funds, $9,214,705 is the fund balance. We have $1,402,000 non-spendable for advances, $426,000 for prepaid items, $3,029,000 for loans receivable. We also have restricted for various areas, just under $2 million restricted for debt, $297,000 for VITA, $1,293,000 for OPEB, $31,000 and $6,500 respectively for restricted for enterprise loans and a Blandin grant, and $456,258 restricted for ambulance services. It also has a committed fund balance of $112,309 and a signed fund balance of $644,437. And the bottom line is of the unassigned fund balances in various funds, in total $414,570 deficit, with a $956,952 positive in the general fund, $14,000 deficit in special revenue, and a $1.3 million deficit in capital project funds. And we'll be able to look at that, which funds have spent money but is yet to be funded. And I think One of the biggest ones on that is even the proposed Miners Memorial facility coming up. We do have various funds with a deficit at year end. As we're looking at this, a little bit touched on that in the previous comment. AFG grant has 14,531 deficit. 2021 Streets and Infrastructure Capital Projects Fund, 4,657 deficit. The Northern Heights Retail Project Capital Projects Fund is 97,000 deficit. The Miners Memorial Restoration Capital Projects Funds, 809,872 in deficit at year end, and 438,951 deficit in the Midway Drive improvement projects. These are all projects that are work in progress, but yet to be funded in any way as of 12/31/19.
Greg, if I may, as far as the comment you just made last about those projects being not funded, I think they are funded. We just have to capture, you know, the revenue as the projects are completed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the revenue for that funding hasn't been recognized yet. Okay. Moving on to the enterprise funds. I'll talk about the
Excuse me, Mayor.
Councilor Johnson.
Could you refer to what page you're on, please, sir?
okay, right now I'm on page 9.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. As you can see, I'm counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 7 enterprise funds shown on this page, and about 1/3 of the way down, I'm going to highlight the operating income or loss of the various enterprise funds. The public utilities showed 5.6 million operating loss. The hospital, 134,406 operating loss. The sewer fund, 622,931 operating income, 260,000 operating income in the solid waste disposal. The golf course showed operating loss of 148,710. Washington Manor, 221,629 on operating income, and the clinic facility capital lease enterprise funds on 951,076. That doesn't tell the whole story, because you have to look at the not operating revenues and loss, and a big part of those is either interest expense on those various funds, or as in the case of the public utilities, loss and disposal of capital assets, or the net loss from the LEA joint venture. So moving back to the public utilities, even though they had a 5.6 million loss, they also show a non-operating revenue net expenses of 1.4 million, resulting in a net decrease in that fund balance of 7,000,000 and 7,008,000 through the year. And you can see even the prior period adjustment I talked about in that fund. Nothing really too significant other than interest expense on all the other various funds. Sewer interest expense, you know, on their long-term debt of 730,000. They did have interest income, so they had a net total net income before transfers of 512,000 in the sewer fund, 303,000 in the solid waste. The golf course, even though they had 148,710, they had a transfer in of 250,000 from the general fund to help fund that fund. So a net change in position, a positive of 101,290. Nothing really significant other than the huge interest expense on the clinic lease. So even though they had a 951,000 operating income, net interest expense over interest income of 426,000 brought that final number down to 524,174 income before transfers for the clinic fund. Moving moving on to page, it's 10 on the handout. And the number there is the written figure on the lower right-hand corner. This is the total long-term debt of the fund. I'll just talk the big total. The governmental fund started the year at $4,698,000. They had net issuance of additional long-term debt of $1,681,000. Paid off a principal $799,000, resulting in an ending balance of $5,579,000 in the governmental funds. The bottom line on the business type started the year at $30,272,000. Had a the public utilities had a water take maintenance agreement, long-term debt increase of $1,367,000, but they had the enterprise funds had $3,826,000 payments on principal through the year, resulting in the ending balance of long-term debt $27,813,000. Moving on to page 11, that basically shows the total long-term debt in 5-year increments, the first 5 years separately and the other ones 5 years grouped as far as when the principal and interest are due in those various areas. So it just gives you an idea how much long-term debt is due in those 5-year spans. As your long-term debt is right now. Page 12 has your OPEB, and we had a big change of that. Last year went from GASB 45 to 75. You're basically recognizing the debt right up front. So the highlight there at 12/31/19, you have a net OPEB liability, and this is with all your OPEB debt, of $23,799,109, and that's actually down from last year's $24,840,000, and that's made of two different things: your total OPEB liability of $25,775,000, but you also have a planned fiduciary net position, which are assets set aside for OPEB of $1,976,000, which nets down from the total OPEB liability to get your net OPEB liability. So it's a good snapshot of where your OPEB is on page 12 of the handout. Right, this is for the entire city, including the public utilities. No.
And for the general's clarification, OPEB stands for
Other post-employment benefits, which basically,
retirement
big
benefits.
thing, retirement, health benefits for retirees.
Thank you.
Which is pretty significant, as you can see by the dollars I'm talking about for the city of Virginia. Now moving on to the findings. We have 3 findings this year. One of them is a carryover that because of limited staff, it prevents the complete segregation of duties in the finance office of the city. You do have a finance director, accounting clerks, an office clerk. So you're segregating as much as possible within staffing limitations. So that's that finding. And 21902 is the lack of control over financial reporting process. That basically has to do with, even though you are doing a detail of the financial and everything, the total pulling it together and detailed review of the notes is done by our firm. And that's basically considered a significant deficiency for us to be putting the audit together. And the control of it by the city staff. And moving to page 14, this has to do with the Minnesota legal compliance, 21903 bid laws. The criteria is, as required by Minnesota Statute 471-345 for contracts estimated to be between $25,000 and $175,000, the public entity should either solicit sealed bids directly negotiate and obtain 2 quotes whenever possible, or utilize the state's co-op venturing services. Contracts estimated to be over $175,000 require sealed bids to be solicited by public notice. The city purchased equipment without obtaining quotes from 2 different vendors or soliciting sealed bids. Without obtaining those bids, the city is in violation, non-compliance with Minnesota statute, and the city purchased a trailer for over $175,000 without soliciting bids. And anything over $175,000 has to have a sealed bid.
If, Greg, if I may, that single bid that we didn't get the 2 bids on, was that for the fire department vehicle, right? There was a specialized purchase. There was no other vendors available. Okay, so I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that moves me to the 5 points we have in the management letter. First one is we recommend that the council review the city's deposit and investment policy, determine if updates are necessary. The city's policy should address all risks, including custodial credit risk for deposit investments. And the second one, 6 non-major governmental funds had deficit fund balances, as we talked in that sheet earlier. The city should continually monitor, update, and pay back schedules and determine funding sources for any funds with deficit fund balances. The Golf Course Enterprise Fund reported an operating loss of $232,770. Management should determine a course of action to reduce or eliminate the continued operating losses in this fund. The city's clinic facility capital lease enterprise fund reported a deficit in net investments in capital assets of over $1,914,000. The capital assets are depreciating at a faster rate than the principal, and the corresponding long-term debt is being paid off. The operations of the cash flow of this fund should continually be reviewed. And the final one I have here is taxes levied in 2018 payable in 2019 for the 2017A GO Capital Improvement Plan was not sufficient to cover the 105% principal and interest due in 2019. We suggest the city review debt levies, determine the proper amount to be levied for each deficit.
Greg, a question regarding that report of the deficits in those 6 categories.
Yes.
I'll just pick the golf course because that's the largest one. How much of that is depreciation, if any? Approximately.
I know that amount. I'll just look at here.
Thank you.
67,000 is depreciation in the golf course.
Okay,
so the 148,000 loss, about half of that.
About half of that. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question for Greg before he continues? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that's the end of my presentation. So any other questions? Or?
Councilor Paulson, you're on the line. Do you have any questions for our auditor?
No, thank you so much for all that.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich, welcome. Glad to see you're on board. Any questions for Mr. Knudsen regarding our audit so far?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you. And
I'm sorry, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Can the staff, or can you talk about what's going to happen since we've sold the hospital? How will that affect our finances for this year's audit moving forward?
okay, and I know once we have the audit, we do have it listed as a subsequent event and talk about the amounts, but I suspect that the net undepreciated capital assets as compared to what you got for the money is going to show a loss on the sale of capital assets. But until the final numbers are put in there and shows. I'm just speculating, but that's what I suspect.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Okay, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Bearable.
on now. Greg, on that, does that include, though, the amount of capital investment that Essentia Health put into that hospital of $29 to $35 million at the time of this lease process? Is that counted, how do you do that with the depreciation? Because they put in a ton of money into that facility.
Right. And I don't believe that was capitalized. I think the dollar amount was capitalized at a certain point in time, and all that dollars was considered to be Essentia's assets.
Technically, the way that lease was, no, they were our assets if they left and moved out of the area, but since they bought it now, how does that really affect us? We have an itemized amount that they spent on every piece of equipment. We have that for your audit if you need it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we have all that numbers available when we're looking at the 2020 audit to make sure that's all accounted for.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bearable. Anyone else for Mr. Knudsen before we let him off the hot seat?
Emphasis on heat.
Yeah, exactly. No, all seriously, thank you, Greg. You guys
Yeah,
always do a professional job for us, so
I appreciate it. Thanks for everything.
you bet.
Quite a different spring and summer this year, isn't it?
It's been challenging.
Yes,
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Britt?
The next item on the agenda is Mr. John Fido regarding a request for the 66-foot easement to create access to the Bridgeview development site. This would be a 66-foot wide easement in front of the Midway Motel.
Good morning, Mr. Fido. Why don't you come forward and welcome to the council meeting once again.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, appreciate the opportunity. Most of you who are aware of Bridgeview's activity over the course of the last 4 years since we purchased the property know about the shortcoming as it related to the public access to the site itself. In our original purchase, at the time that the Highway 53 and the bridge was being done by MnDOT, Department of Transportation, there was a filing as it related to access on this particular piece of property that was, in fact, allowing us the ability to get into the site. After the project was completed, MnDOT refiled their right-of-way portion of the project, and we discovered that we were pretty much aced out of a public access to the site, which made development of the parcel almost impossible in terms of conveying title. We appreciate the opportunity to have this changed to give us, in fact, a 66-foot right-of-way. And two things can happen. Number one, we recently had an interest in a portion of the property. Unfortunately, we were not able to respond in a timely way, so in a competitive nature, the potential purchaser went onto a site that did have clear title. This particular action will now give us a chance to develop the portion of the property as is the request from certain individual commercial potential buyers, and thereby divide the property if in fact the opportunity presents itself. If we were selling the property as a whole, this would be less difficult. However, the problem will be resolved by this action, so we appreciate the fact that you're doing this to kind of help us move forward. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. You said clear title. The easement makes the title not clear, or what? Why is the title not clear?
The title, Mr. Mayor, members of the council,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson, the title itself is clear. The access to the property is not.
Okay, because when you were talking, you said the title wasn't clear, so I wanted to clarify that, my understanding. And so if you can explain, if we give you the 66-foot easement, what does that mean to the city? Do we retain ownership? And could you please explain what that means?
Yes, and we do have Matt Reed here from SCH too, in case Matt wants to jump in. But it would be a public easement, so we would retain ownership of it. We would just be allowing traffic and traversing over that easement.
And it would be, any improvements on the easement would be the liability of the
City.
developer, the city.
City, because it'll be a city basically a city right-of-way is what
Okay.
it'll be.
So we have to build the street to get in?
This is just over the parking lot of Midway Motel right now, so it's really for us to determine are we going to improve that parking lot.
Okay.
At this time, and Matt might have been up there more than I have, I don't know that we really need to do anything. I think people could traverse over that parking lot. I think it's still okay.
Correct. And in fact, that public easement will be recorded on the deed, again, giving us a clear indication that the property does present a public access point.
Okay, that clarifies things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Any other questions from the council? Councilor
I have one
Barnzelli?
question, Mayor.
One moment, I'll get Councilor Barnzelli and then get over to you there, Councilor Paulson. Thank you. Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. John, with that big sign up there, have you had any phone calls? Anybody interested in the property?
Actually, with the marketplace as it is right now, as you might expect, COVID, what have you, the economy has been somewhat difficult and slow. But in fact, we did have an inquiry on a portion of the property about 60 days ago.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barnzelli. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. John, on the land map that's in our packet, and it's got a little yellow section there, is that the section that 66 speaks?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that we can put that into perspective in terms of the percentage of property that you're asking for that easement. Because at one Cuyuna Drive, the city doesn't own that lot, do we?
Correct. We do not own one Cuyuna Drive. We only own one Midway Drive.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Any other comments from the council? Matt, did you have any comments at all? None from our engineering of record, SEH? Councilor Johnson.
I will move the 66 right-of-way easement to facilitate development of the property.
I will support.
Moved by Councilor Johnson and supported by Councilor Baraboo to approve the request for the 66-foot easement into the property that's operated by Mr. Fido and his firm. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Councilor Beyondich?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fido.
Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate the opportunity to move this project forward.
Good to see you once again.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is we have on the phone Jeannie Mackey regarding accessible parking on Chestnut Street.
Ms. Mackey, good morning. Jean, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. I'm not on the phone. I'm on my laptop, and I would prefer to appear by video if that would be permissible.
We don't have that capability here, Jean.
Okay. This is pretty short. Based on my own experiences in shopping in Virginia, I would ask the council to consider on a trial basis designating one handicap parking spot on each block of Chestnut from 1st Avenue down to 6th Avenue, and I would want that on each side of the street. So two handicap parking places per block on opposite sides of the street. As far as I know, I believe there is only one handicap parking space on all of Chestnut Street, and that's on the very far west end, around the corner from Rocket Liquor.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mackey. I do believe we we have our staff here. We do have handicap parking on every single block on the main, on Chestnut Street, on both sides of the street, on every single block, on the end, on the corners.
I don't believe we have any on the, we have one on the 300 block in front of the deli. I don't know that there's another one on the north side of the street.
Britt, go ahead and answer that comment made by Councilor Beyondich.
I was just stating that I think in front of Teeny Square there is one also. But we certainly could have staff take a look at that and get back with a map and show where they're at.
Ms. Mackey, what we can do is provide you a copy, a map of all the handicap parking spots that are on the Chestnut Street in Virginia. There is one across the street at the Teeny Square building on the corner there as well. But we can provide you with that mapping system and take another look at your request moving forward. So you're requesting that to ensure
Okay,
that...
excuse me, may I further explain why this has come to my attention? I have been doing some drive-up shopping on Chestnut Street, and I believe it has been an excellent experience with Material Girl and Range Office Supply right on the same block. I've been able to call in my orders. They have walked out with my purchases, and it's worked out beautifully so that it was not necessary for me to pull out my walker from the back seat of my car and get it over the curb and into the store, blah, blah, blah. So, and also I understand that specifically the Lyric Center, where I enjoy going for programs and for their art exhibitions, it's my understanding that the Lyric Center had asked for a handicap parking spot on the alley side of the building by the parking lot back there, and they had been told that the city didn't feel it was necessary. And that makes no sense to me. So that's all I have to say today, and I'll look forward to receiving that map, and
Mr.
we
Mayor.
will talk further.
Okay, Gene, would you please stay on the line for a moment? Maybe we can help address some of the issues that you have and
Sure thing.
give you some information of a path moving forward. First of all, Councilor Baraboo.
Gene, this is Councilor Baraboo. I happen to be the chairperson of the Street and Alley Committee that I've been working with for some new streets and stuff. We will go back and take a good look at this. Some of the reasons we don't put handicap slots in middles of streets and stuff and sidewalks, you need more space. So we always try to put them on the corners of the particular blocks because we have to leave more space for the handicap. But we will take a look at this again after recommendations from staff, because we're going to be meeting more as this COVID disappears on feasibility studies for the street projects that we've got planned for 21, 22, 23, and 4. So we'll take a look at this, but we'll get that map to you also, the current ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would think the other, the challenge here is that when we have long winters and we have a lot of empty buildings downtown, and people have a tendency to shovel into the street, and they leave a berm up instead of shoveling to the street and then sliding it over so there's not a berm. So I would think that's one of the concerns. And I can also see if I were to break a leg needing to park at the Teeny Square building to have to walk down 3/4 of a block, I can see that being a challenge too. So I would really like us to look at maybe which blocks have the businesses that are accessed most by folks who, as opposed to the businesses that are office building fronts, as opposed to retail and storefronts. And maybe there's some balance we can find in providing that space. And I see Deputy Chief of Police is stepping up, so I'll yield to him.
Thank you, Counselor
if
Johnson.
I might.
Chief, Assistant Chief Nicola, could you give us some information on this issue?
Absolutely, and it is this on? Okay. This is an ongoing problem, undoubtedly, and again, many of those blocks, if I had to park at the end in a handicap spot and I'm going to a business in the middle of the block, especially during the winter months, it makes it difficult, which later on we're going to discuss parking. Timely sometimes how we discuss these things, which is why that 2-hour parking downtown is so important to keep the flow of vehicles moving, so that way somebody that possibly has to park in an otherwise handicapped spot can find a spot a lot closer to the business they want to access. So again, getting those vehicles moving, making sure that's not employees and other people clogging up those parking spots downtown, it is. It's amazing how we talk about all these empty businesses downtown, but yet it still seems like those certain areas where we have a lot of businesses, those spots are still constantly taken up. So we should probably have our former parking guy, Dan, here to explain the routes he takes and the parking enforcement that he did. He did an absolutely wonderful job, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But absolutely, keeping that 2-hour parking in place is key.
Thank you, Chief Nicola. Councilor Beyondich, I think we kind of cut you off there. Did you have any comments you'd like to make for Ms. Mackey's request? Councilor Beyondich?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson? Councilor Paulson?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't hear you call my name. No, I actually would welcome just another study on that, because I do agree with Jean that it is hard to access businesses in the middle. So I really will look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mackey, we're going to direct staff and maybe part of the Street and Alley Committee to provide you a map of where we're at now and take a look at what we can do to help accommodate handicap parking, improve them somehow on along Chestnut Street. Is that amenable to you?
Yes, Mayor Cuffey, thank you. And one more thing I would like to throw into this mix. As we all know, the population of the city of Virginia is aging. And if our aging population is going to be able to shop on Chestnut Street in a very friendly environment, having easy access, and I hope continuing curbside service from retail establishments is going to make the whole community a lot better. And whatever the council and you, Mr. Mayor, can do to accomplish that, I will be very grateful. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mackey, very much. We have one more comment from a Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. To regards to putting that parking sign in the alley between the Coates Hotel and maybe the fire chief could explain. You don't want to have cars parked in that alley in case there's a fire, right?
Yeah, the alley isn't wide enough. It has to be kept open for large vehicles, emergency vehicles to make the be able to respond.
This came up years ago, Councilor Baraboo, about putting no parking in that alley there, and they were concerned for the hotel. Well, thank you, Mrs. Mackey.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Staff has been directed to address this issue with the appropriate levels of management and try to come back with a map, provide that to Ms. Mackey, maybe the other business owners, involve Street and Alley in this regard, and try to find a way in which to help accommodate some additional parking for those who need special parking availability for access. Any further discussion about that? Okay, thank you. Britt?
Thank you. With the council's permission, permission, I'd like to move to item number 6, approve resolution for change order number 2 for the 418 pass-through park. And we do have Matt Reed from SCH here to discuss the change order.
Okay, thank you. We're moving the agenda item down to number 6. Matt Reed regarding the change order for the 418 Progress Park. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. There we go. Okay, can you hear me? All right, good morning, everybody. As they were working on grading and getting ready for the sidewalk work out at the Pocket Park, they unearthed or uncovered an old foundation wall right along the sidewalk, surprise, surprise, on Chestnut Street. And that foundation wall was cut down about 1.5 to 2 inches lower than the sidewalk. And so when they were looking at trying to join the new sidewalk up to the old sidewalk, what are we gonna do here? We could have overlaid 1.5 inches of concrete over there that probably would have busted out at some point anyway. So after talking it through with the contractor, we did have an alternate plan in case this wasn't gonna be an option, but I felt and I recommended to staff, and we got some preliminary direction, hopefully the council agrees, that we should jackhammer out or hammer out a few more inches of that wall and get it down so they could actually anchor the concrete, the new concrete, to the old foundation wall. And that made a lot of sense to me and will probably prolong the longevity of that project. So the cost that you have in front of you is $2,145, and that was for the extra work and the extra concrete that had to go in there. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Okay, thank you. Any councilor have any questions regarding the change order as appearing in your packet? Councilor Johnson?
I do have one question.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry, but go ahead, Councilor Beyondich.
Do you foresee any further change orders on this project? I mean, we always have change orders.
I think this particular change order was something that was discovered that wasn't anticipated. So, I mean, when you have an unanticipated discovery, I think that's normally when change orders come to be. So under this particular case, as frustrating it is for all of us, Councilor Beyondich, this is a recommendation. There is an alternative method to do that, so we wouldn't have to go with this change order. But the recommendation is this change order will provide the opportunity to ensure longevity of this project.
Pardon me? It's very close. The Pocket Park, all of the concrete has been poured. They just have to haul in a few more rocks and do some landscaping and put the light poles up. So that part is getting very close. And if you drive by the library, that's really in good shape. That's just about done as well. So we're probably 90 to 95% done.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any further comments, Councilor Beyondich?
No, I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this within the contingency of the, is this within the contingency of the overall budget?
I'll just vote. I know.
Forgot the mute button.
I was talking politics this morning. And like,
If he's talking to someone else, go ahead, Matt.
I guess I'll have to ask Sherry or Britt on that. I'm not sure on that particular project. On the Pocket Park.
Sherry, our finance director.
Yes, we can do it.
Okay, then I'll
Didn't
move
realize I'm
that we
gonna be-
approve the, okay, I will move the change order, knowing that the removal of the front end of the old building will probably save the sidewalk for the future.
Moved to approve the change order for the Pocket Park at 418 Chestnut Street by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Bearable?
Just
I
one.
have a question.
Hang on just one moment. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. When we do demolition in the future on any, say there's any buildings coming up on Chestnut for demolition, what is the normal process? How far do we do that if there's a wall? I would say that would be a foundational wall, right, Matt?
Right, that's what it looked like to us. Typically, I think they try to take as much out as they can. In this case, I guess I would, where that wall was located, my suspicion is they were concerned about doing some additional damage to the city property, the sidewalks and some things, and that's probably why it got left in there. Not saying right or wrong, but that is probably why it was still there.
Got it. So maybe if we do any future demo and, there could be a potential for additional, inlets like this, maybe we should just consider how far down we should be going when we do demo.
Mayor, if I may.
Okay, anything else, Councilor Paulson?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bearable.
Okay, when we do demos, Councilor Paulson, especially when we take down old houses, old homes, we have to remove the foundation that was required by the state. So this was probably done long before the new criteria. So we are taking out the foundations as we remove and demo buildings in Virginia. That's a requirement now.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from the council regarding the motion to approve the change order for the Passport Park on 14th Chestnut Street? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
The next item we'll go to, since we have Matt at the podium, is number 7, review the feasibility study and the report for the 2021-2023 street and infrastructure improvements.
Phase 1.
Yep. This was sent to you by email. It's a very large document. I believe it's 100 and something pages. I do have hard copies here for anybody that needs it.
Matt,
All right, yes.
in a nutshell.
In a nutshell,
Thank
yes, correct, Mayor. This is for phase 1. So we've had this vetted through the Street and Alley Committee a few times. It's actually been in front of this body, I believe, at least once. And so this is the feasibility report for the streets that we identified as being part of what we're calling phase 1. We started out with the larger project. I can go through as much of this information as you'd like, but I think the next step in the process, being that we're following the Chapter 429 for special assessments, is to accept the feasibility study officially with the council and then set a public hearing date. And I believe there's some resolutions that Britt has, or will be coming to the council meeting next week. So I can answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, let's go around the room first before we go to the phone line. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, the one thing that's holding up this feasibility public hearings happens to be the COVID-19 right now. So we're going to have to be really flexible until we see what the state does and everything, because we have to have public hearings. We have to notify everybody within, I think, isn't it 300 feet of the project, every direction, something like that, if I remember correctly. So maybe it's 500 feet. And that becomes a big public meeting when we do this, and those are full house meetings when we do these, because there's projections of what it's going to cost each individual homeowner, business, etc. So we're going to have to kind of play these by ear, and I'm assuming, Britt, you're going to have some flexibility in the resolutions. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of here today is to approve the feasibility study moving forward for the street improvement project. So, Councilor Paulson, do you have any questions or comments about this feasibility study?
No, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Biondic.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
I will move the resolution, or move the acceptance of the feasibility study phase 1.
Okay, moved by Councilor Johnson to approve the feasibility study for this project. It's easy for me to say, and supported by Councilor Freely. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Just a quick.
Councilor Bearable.
If you go through this item, which I did since I'm chair of Street and Alley, I went through these 180 some pages, and I'll tell you, by the time you're done with it, your head is swimming, and I couldn't do it all at one time. But I appreciate, Matt, what you've done with this in your firm, because this is a big, important step for this whole project that we're doing in phases.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Baraboo. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Once again, thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
In the interest of time, Mayor, I know we have a lot of people in the room that are here for item number 9, which is a review the posting of part-time parking monitor position. Deputy Chief Nicola is here for that reason and he needs to get to meet the adjuster at City Hall at 10:30, so if we can get him up right now, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
And we also have Scott Duranko from AFSMI here as well.
Okay, we're moving to item number 9. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Assistant Chief Nicola, once again.
Once again, Mayor, thank you. Council. Property taxes and parking, always fun discussions, right? Really get the blood boiling for some folks. Posts on our Facebook page don't quite get the comments like my parking posts do, so it's always exciting to see what people have to say. And it does, and I'll be honest, nobody hates parking enforcement more than a cop in the middle of January at 3 a.m. when it's cold as all heck out. So bottom line is, we don't like it, public doesn't like it, but it's one of those necessary evils. It really is. We were fortunate to have Dan Wolf, who did several great months of work with us, and he's moved on to bigger and better things with the Public Works guys. So by all means, it's time to replace Dan. It's one of these things that certainly we have officers that are capable of doing parking enforcement, but it certainly takes away from other duties and things that they should be doing. During the nights, by all means, we have officers out and about. This is when Chief Mattson came and spoke with you guys about our new system. This is our fancy new system. It's essentially a cell phone inside a printer. Everything's a drop-down box, makes things nice and easy, prints off these handy little tickets, even has a picture of the vehicle on there, so when somebody wants to come and dispute it and tell me it wasn't their vehicle, well, we have a picture of it. So pretty neat, pretty handy. So far it's worked out extremely well. Things have gotten a lot easier as far as people going online and paying, and certainly there's a surcharge, so people can call into the PD and pay directly to us or come in and use the drop box. So very needed though. Obviously we have our parking lots. We have the downtown, especially with the 2-hour parking that we already hit on, and calendar parking. And you know, sometimes people tend to think that calendar parking should be something that, by all means, we get out and we enforce overnight, but all day long, calendar parking is an issue throughout town, especially on our side streets. You know, we're fortunate on some of our major thoroughways, the 8th Streets and the 9th Avenues and all these, they're wide enough, but our side streets are not. We've said it before, these streets were built for horses and carriages, not for extremely wide vehicles. Last week alone, Bruce, sitting at our receptionist counter, took 2 reports from UPS drivers on certain streets they weren't able to get through and had to back up and go all the way around. That's a UPS driver. Now, imagine it's one of these guys' rigs, or one of our officers trying to get down there and somebody's having a medical emergency. Or a little less like on Sunday, when we had a fire up on the north side of town. Okay? You know, and again, kudos to the guys and gals from the fire department, and I'm sure some of you guys saw our officer did an outstanding job helping that family off the roof, so I had to give a quick plug. These days we gotta give them in when we can as law enforcement. So, but very important, I think, that we replace our parking monitor, get them up to speed, and get them back out on the street. It's funny, when Dan first started, I told him, it's been, at that point, it had been almost a month since we had a parking monitor. I said, when you get out there, you're gonna see it's chaotic, because people in their minds now, nobody's enforcing. I said, over a week, you will see that all of a sudden, you're gonna go street by street, and there might be 1 or 2 vehicles where there was 10 that are offsides. And as long as you've got somebody out there that's maintaining the enforcement, you find that people keep it in the back of their mind and things go quite well. As soon as it's not enforced, bam, it's just chaotic again. So that's my spiel. Any questions?
No, I don't have any. So the request is to move forward with the employment of a replacement parking monitor for the city of Virginia. I look for comments, questions, concerns regarding this from the public. You know, I just want to just say it quickly. This is not a revenue-generating entity. It's a safety issue. You know, the concerns were why we're enforcing the law on 6th Avenue when it's wide enough for cars to park on both sides of the street. Well, that's the city's calendar parking rule. Maybe that regulation has to be changed to some degree for the summer months, but in the winter months you have to have those. But for those businesses, like you had indicated, in those streets where they're very narrow, it's very difficult even for a pickup truck to get through there. So we have to make sure that we can have access to and from. We try to give everybody an opportunity during the fall and the season when they change over to calendar parking. You make sure the general public is aware of that. You put notes on the vehicles. Hey, next time you're going to get a ticket. So we take every conceivable effort to inform the public that this is something we need, to comply with. And so, as the mayor, and I don't know about the councilors, other than the COVID-19 potential concerns and violations throughout the city of Virginia, parking is by far the major complaint. So, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. When I've done my ride-alongs, we have, usually it's a warning, and at night it is on some of our side streets, it's very dark, and trying to get through, it can be quite a challenge for a squad. And I think that for me, honestly, I've not had a parking ticket because I'm cognizant of the ramifications, and I think that is just one of those things that people, like you said, when they think there's no enforcement, they just don't care. But I'm supportive of the parking monitor, and I think it is something that if you follow the rules, you never have to do that. We already know our officers are not going out and searching cars to tag at all. It's when it's blatant and a safety concern that they are doing those tickets. And I got to watch one of the officers on a Saturday do a ticket on Main Street, and that is a slick machine you have, and it takes a lot less time, and it's a lot more there's a lot more culpability and responsibility that goes with it. Thanks for coming.
Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, I agree 100%. We need to go back to the parking monitor. I live out in the Lency addition, and in the winter months, if those cars are parked on both sides on some of those streets, snowplows can't get through. We've had some damage every once in a while because of the narrowness of the streets. We need to switch sides because of the snow. We've had some significant snowfalls the last 2 winters, and our public works crews do not need the angst when they have to plow streets. So I'm 100% for the parking monitor.
And just a quick comment, I'm going to give you the example. My nephew, 2nd Avenue, across the old Ostro's grocery store, last winter, parked there for 2 days, got a citation, didn't move the car. It was towed to Armory Shell, $257 for the tow, $15 for the ticket. Do you think that he complied after that? He did. And so we don't want to tow anybody's vehicle. We just want to try to have compliance. That's all. So thank you. So we're looking for a motion moving forward. Before we do, Councilor Paulson, did you have any questions about this issue?
No, I really appreciate Sherry providing additional information, and I am in full agreement that it is time to do this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
No, I'm good with this. Thank you.
Okay, motion, please.
Also move, Mayor, that we reinstitute the position of parking monitor in a higher process for the city of Virginia.
Okay, moved by Councilor Baraboo to fill the position of the parking monitor for the city of Virginia. Is there support?
I'll support, but just quickly for discussion.
Yeah, support by Councilor Friedlieb. Discussion, Councilor Friedlieb.
It's my understanding that the parking monitor position was revenue positive as opposed to projected budgeting, but I just want to remind the public that that's not because of enthusiastic enforcement, it's because of non-compliance. So, thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Councilor Friedlieb. Okay, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank
Before
you,
you
Council.
leave, Chad, can we just give a quick update on the fire?
Yeah, which one?
Our fire at City Hall,
Yeah.
and that the adjuster's coming today.
Right. So, and again, real quick, kudos to the fire department for their quick response, and it being a Friday that happened to be a holiday. As staff that nobody was around really, but man, everybody sitting from home or the lake or sitting in the boat wherever. Everybody got on the line and did what we had to do to make things happen and get things in motion, and it made coming in Monday morning for everybody a lot easier. Service Master's been there since yesterday morning. Certainly the squad room, the far east end of the PD, took a lot of the bulk, but thank goodness to that manned fire door that we have. That's kind of that barricade before you get into our garage. The garage literally looks like it's belongs in a third world country during war zone times, or maybe a good weekend in Chicago or something. But either which way, it's it looks rough. You know, certainly I can email out some photos and whatnot. Like Britt mentioned, we do have the insurance adjuster coming, so 2 squad cars completely totaled though, including the equipment and everything else. If anybody's bored, we do have some really good video footage of it all happening as well, so if you want to swing by and take a look at it. Very unfortunate, and we'll find out more about the garage here soon. Initial speculation is the garage might be a loss, certainly. Thank goodness it wasn't a wood structure. The concrete and the plaster held up at least a little while, so. Air conditioning's still working, so we'll call that a plus for now, since most of the air conditioning equipment's up on the roof. But yeah, other than that, the smell is dissipating slowly. You'll see when you walk in City Hall, the main corridors, just because the lack of airflow in there, it almost smells worse there than it does some of the other areas. So, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So, any questions on that?
Okay, no, thanks, Chief. So the adjuster's coming in. We did the preliminary investigation. Fire Marshal Clark and the fire department, of course, you said was on the scene quickly. Was able to contain that fire and save other parts of the building. And the issue with respect to the investigation, the fire marshal began the investigation along with the staff and the assistant fire chief who was on scene and the commanding units that were there. And so they took care of that. Did call in the state fire marshal. There'll be an independent investigation in concert. So we have transparency there. So we're moving forward with the investigative portion of it. And once again, I think I want to just say thank you to the professional staff, particularly to our fire EMS people, because we have a full-time fire EMS staff, and they were there on the spot. That saved our City Hall. Even though the fire door, you know, was a key to maintaining and containing the fire, it was the quick action from our fire EMS that really made sure that that door was not compromised. So it was a phenomenal response. That's why we have professional staff working for us here every day. So, okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Councilor Johnson?
Mayor, and it is my understanding that the brand new mural was basically unaffected by
it. Looks good from what I've seen.
That's
so
what
far.
I thought, but just because that was a concern I heard, and just the general appearance looks like you couldn't tell there anything happened from that side. So,
we'll consider that a win.
Yes, thank you. Yes, anything else? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Britt?
Thank you. We'll go back up to item number 4. Review the quotes for purchase of warranty for Zoll defibrillators and ventilators.
Chief, welcome back from a well-deserved sabbatical. Back for the lack of a better term, back into the fire.
Morning, Council and Mayor, and after what happened this past week, I don't know as I should leave again. Seems like everything broke loose, but that's the importance of having good staff that take over and did everything that could be done. And kudos to the police department too. They had a great save the other morning off that roof of that house. So before you have item number 4, which is the quotes for the warranty of the Zoll defibrillators. It's actually more than just the defibrillator. This is the entire monitor that assesses everything from blood pressure to cardiac rhythms. Just like we have with our ambulances, just like we have with our gurneys, with the strikers, there's maintenance that is required for these units. Cables break, things get dropped. They were not previously under the last sale. They were under warranty for a couple of years. That warranty has expired. We need to continue a maintenance agreement. And just for example, we have one unit that needs some repairs, and it's over $4,000 just to repair the unit. They will waive that repair costs if we are covered by a maintenance agreement with them. So I want to give a kudos to our Division Chief of Training. Division Chief Larson did a lot of research on this. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here today to present it personally, but she has done an incredible amount of negotiation with the Zoll company on both the ventilators and the defibrillators. We do need these maintenance agreements. If not, we will have to pay out of pocket for every time one breaks, and the shipping fees alone are $125 every time we have to send one of these units in. It starts to add up very, very quickly. We we evaluated the options. We looked at our use of these as very, very heavy. We use these monitors, we use these ventilators quite a bit. We do need these maintenance agreements, but because of the cost of this, I thought it would, not only is it required, but I thought it would be good to give an explanation of why an expenditure this large is being asked.
Quick question, Chief. What is the lifespan of one of those old defibrillators?
So we've tried to project those out on a 7-year capital
Very good.
equipment replacement plan because of the changing technology. That's really what drives a lot of these things, and then the updates that continue to occur and the capabilities just continue to change. So,
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else?
Mayor.
Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, just for re-edification, what do one of these monitors and defibrillators actually cost on their new, Chief, do you remember offhand?
I do not remember offhand. How much? 15. That's right.
15,000.
Thank you. Yes, that was
a
a capital for 6 of those. Yeah, we replaced 6 of those. There were 15 apiece.
Okay.
It was a significant expenditure about 2 years ago because now our warranty has expired.
So are we looking to extend the warranty, or are we looking for a
It's a
long-term?
separate position. So the warranty expires. This is a maintenance agreement. So this is a
Okay.
maintenance service agreement.
So you can't do an extended warranty on those?
No, it's not
Unless you-
called that. It's called
So,
it's a maintenance
okay,
service agreement.
Okay, same difference.
Right.
Okay. What is the cost of that, Chief? I saw it in, are you looking at the 5-year agreement?
Yeah, so I'll have to pull this up, sorry, on my phone right now, because I
So
didn't
it's
print out
about
the
eight,
whole pocket.
so it's about $8,000 a year?
It's 7,625, it looks like the price for 6.
Yep, 7,625 for every year for 6 years.
Okay. Okay, so it's longer than a 5 then. Okay, thank you.
So then one quick question. So as these reach the 7-year equipment replacement schedule, so the warranty on those is 2 years.
Yep.
So once the warranty expires, you're looking to a maintenance agreement for 5 years. And after the 5 years, the replacement of these aren't incremental, right?
No.
They are all.
You need to do it all at
They
once.
all have to
Yep.
be redone. So this maintenance agreement is really going to only cover those years until you get ready to replace them. Then you buy new ones, which is reflected
2-year warranty,
in
another
the
5-year
2-year warranty.
maintenance
So at that particular time, you'll be coming forward with probably a package that'll include the 2-year warranty and a potential maintenance agreement moving forward.
It extends afterwards, yes.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Councilor Johnson.
So what is the total, are we looking at the 4290 or which is the one we need to?
The 42 is over the 5-year period, so if you divide that by the yearly cost, you'll have that amount spread out over 5 years.
But it's a 5-year contract.
Correct.
I'll move the 5-year contract at $42,090.
Councilor Johnson moves item number 4 under finance, which is the quote for purchase of the warranty for the Zols defibrillators and ventilators. Is there support?
All support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, Chief, are these all gonna go out at the same time, so we have to buy a whole big package number again? So we're not talking incrementally then in the future, so you gotta get that in capital budgets in the future.
Yep, and it is in capital budget. We've already got that scheduled. It's not like vehicles where you can replace one at a time. All of them have to be have for continuity.
That's what I assumed, so that's why I'm asking the question. Thank you.
I just want to point out that there's 2 actual separate contracts. One's for the ventilators and one's for the actual monitors and defibrillator units. So the first one that you have there is for ventilators, and it's the same kind of thing, but it's a much smaller amount.
I will amend.
I'm sorry, Councilor Johnson?
I will amend my motion to include both of those quotes.
Very good. And you made your support?
I'll amend my support.
Any further discussion? Councilor Paulson?
No, I just wanted to make sure that this would be in the capital expenditures in the budget, and that was made clear. So I'm all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
I'm good as well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I suppose you want to move down to item,
Item number 8.
Number
Review
8.
the proposed memorandum of understanding with IAF Local 390 for extension of certification requirements due to COVID-19.
Joel, did you want to address this, or Chief?
I was going to say, if you have anything to add, you're more than welcome, but we're in full agreement on this one.
All right, very good.
I think it's a very reasonable request, just due to the constraints that COVID has placed on us. I support it from the departmental and operational side, and the union supports it just as looking out for their members, and we just haven't been able to comply. I mean, they haven't had any kind of testing, so it's all been on hold. So when you require somebody to do something as part of their job and then don't give them the opportunity to do it, it seems like we need to make a little bit of a accommodation for them. So
Sure,
it's an
I'm
ask.
just fine with
If I
this.
might, just to recap what's going on, we have a MOU in place for a couple of our employees that they're dual role firefighters / EMTs, with the understanding that they were supposed to get their paramedic certification within a certain amount of time. And then COVID happened, and all the certification classes got canceled, and they are not able to get them in that time frame we gave them. So it's our benefit to keep these employees as dual role firefighters while they're still working on getting their certifications for paramedic as soon as they can, once it opens again. Hopefully, COVID will end soon, and we will hopefully get things rolling again, and these people can get their certifications.
And one of the things that's really holding
Yes,
us up is
go
what's
ahead,
called
Chief.
one of the things that's really holding us up is what's called a candidate physical abilities test,
Right.
CPAT, and you can't have any kind of gatherings to run these physical tests, and so they can't even check that box off to go any further.
Very good, thank you. Counselor Johnson?
What does this extend, what are we extending it to? 6-month extension. Okay, I will move the 6-month extension in the new memorandum of understanding.
A move by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Paulson. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries.
I would just address item number 10 can be probably struck from the agenda.
Thank you, yes. Item number 10, I believe, can be struck from the agenda with everybody's agreement. We have received his resignation notice.
Yeah.
So this is now a non-item. for us
Okay,
to
item
consider.
10 is now struck from the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Welcome
Thanks,
back.
Chief.
Item number 11, request from Holy Spirit Church for transfer of ownership of property. This is the former Strom Thielen property, or the Clay Creations property in the corner of 3rd Avenue and 2nd Street South.
Thank you. This is often referred to, among other things, as the old Pottery Barn. Okay, thank you. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the Britt sending out the minutes and everything. This is something that we agreed to well over a year ago, and I guess we just need to figure out to finalize the purchase of the property for $1 to the church, and then they will be doing improvements on the property, is my understanding. So I'll make that motion to move forward with the purchase or the selling of the property for $1.
Moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Counselor Beyondich?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And item number 12 is the review the appraisal for purchase of property owned by Our Savior's Lutheran Church, and this is in regards to our Miners Memorial Project. This portion of the meeting may be closed as per Minnesota Statute 13D05, Subdivision 3.
Okay, thank you, Britt. I suppose depending upon how this conversation goes, yeah, so I don't anticipate that we need to close the meeting. I think it's been publicly discussed on a regular basis with respect to this. I think we're going to review the appraisal, which came out higher than I anticipated it would, but it also gives us the depiction from the appraiser that any easement that we're requesting from Our Savior's Lutheran Church does not defray or reduce the appraisal for that property. So thank you. Any comments, concerns, questions regarding this appraisal, or whether we're considering right now. So,
Mayor, I have a
yes, Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, and I'll have to do a, what do you call that? I'm a member of the Our Savior's Lutheran Church. So I don't have to abstain any longer from votes because I've resigned all my positions at the Our Savior's Lutheran Church. I was a treasurer on the council and on the executive committee, but I just resigned that a month ago now. So, but the comment is, have we presented this offer yet to the church and the council people? Because that has not come up that I'm aware of.
I have presented the appraisal to them. I don't have official action to make an offer. I need the council to determine what the price we want to pay, but they have the appraisal. They know
Okay.
what the cost was listed in there.
A suggestion, seeing that it's a organization that is of a religious nature, which it is, I would suggest when you make the offer, they may entertain not a full price all at one time, but over time. Go from year to year to year to pay so much from year to year to year if we cannot afford to do that with the appraisal price on that, because I believe churches are pretty easy to do, so they have income coming in steady for a number of years. That would just be my suggestion.
Okay, I think the purpose of this meeting today, thank you, Councilor Bearable, the purpose of this meeting today is just to review the appraisal. I think we have to come back and discuss after some a little bit of additional investigation what we can or willing to pay or what's reasonable and prudent, and then once we come to a decision as a elected body, and we can make that a presentation at that time to what we anticipate would be a first-time offer. Would that be the appropriate method moving forward, Britt?
I really need to know what we want to, what our maximum price is going to be, sooner rather than later. This is part of the minor's budget, so this is part of our funding package. We'll be talking about this on Thursday with the budget, so we have a dollar amount in that budget earmarked, thinking based on the appraisal, what we're going to pay for that property. So we necessarily don't have to spread it over many years. We could pay for it outright.
Okay, so what I'd ask before, if I may, Councilor Bearable, that if we need to do this sooner than later, I still think that we have time to talk about this within staff, with the MEC design team, with some of the councilors that go to that, to determine what it would be an appropriate offer, and then we can discuss it at the next council meeting.
Yes. This is holding up the project.
Right.
So we need to get this land transaction done.
Right.
So yes, the next council meeting will be a great date to get this done at.
Thank you, Britt.
thank
And
you.
I am not comfortable discussing an offer without being vetted significantly moving forward. So I refer to the other councilors. Councilor Friedlieb.
So this is exclusively for the 1.06 acre parcel, and the estimated cost is $220,000, and that's to provide the easement for the roadway that would go through. We would own it.
Okay, I guess if I may clarify, thank you, Councilor Friedlieb. I thought it was the. Just for the easement property. To obtain the property, right? I mean, to obtain the property where the easement would have gone through. Yeah.
Obtain the property to run the 6th Street South extension from
Okay.
from 9th Avenue to 12th Avenue.
Okay, I was remiss about that. I thought it was for all the property, the appraisal of all the property, so I was remiss there.
No,
So,
no, that appraisal, like Councilor Friedley mentioned, was just for that 1.06 acres.
okay, very good, thank you. Any more, Councilor Friedlieb, Councilor Bearable?
Yeah, there is something that needs to have action on quickly, because church councils and church membership have to, as a body, approve if they're going to sell, and that would take a special meeting of the church as a whole, because they only meet once a year, and that's in January of each year, and this needs to be done. So when we go there, we have to make sure they're willing. If they're willing to sell, that would come first through their process, which is a executive meeting, then a council meeting. Finance, I don't think there's a problem with through the church, but then they would have to call a special meeting of their congregation in order to formalize it. But you can get probably preliminary approval to start with.
All right, thank you. Did you want to continue with your comments, Councilor Freely, and then move on to Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, just real quick, Britt, so you're saying that within the construction cost budget, that amount of money had been pre-set aside for the purchase of that property, and
Correct.
we budgeted accordingly?
Correct.
Or, okay, so we have budgeted accordingly despite an unanticipated cost of that amount?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would, I don't want to slow the process down of the miners, and I guess if I would ask if there's any other business, and I would like to close the meeting so we can get staff moving on this immediately instead of, you know, we can't close the meeting on Wednesday because it hasn't been posted. We'd have to close the meeting on Tuesday night to have the discussion, and no action it could slow the process down. So I guess I would request if there's any other agenda items that need to come up, and then I would move to close the meeting if there's no other agenda meetings to have that discussion today.
Well, thank you, Councilor Johnson. So I know the statute says you may close the meeting. Do you think it's necessary for us to do that this time, Britt? Is it, or is this, or maybe I would ask our city attorney, is it necessary to close the meeting, or would you recommend that we do? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And obviously, the way the statute is phrased, as far as closing the meeting, it is a permissive. What the council should consider is, I mean, what we're really looking at is developing a negotiation strategy for presenting an offer. Those typically, you preserve some advantage, and advantage is maybe a strong word, but it's generally advantageous to the city to close the meeting and have those conversations confidentially. I mean, if you have an open discussion about what your highest offer, lowest offer is, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a bit.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so it's moved by Councilor Johnson to close the meeting for, what's that? Right, yeah. To close the meeting. Is there support?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. There's a motion on the floor, but no support, so continue with your question.
So if we do go into closed session, and we're on the Zoom line, would we just have to maybe call a cell phone, be on like a speaker? Because the Zoom is a publicly posted number.
Yeah, I can give you a call back.
Okay. Okay, I'm fine with going into closed session, so I would support that.
Okay. Mr. Aller? This is the end of the meeting. So, but good point. Thank you. So this is the last item on the agenda as scheduled. And so there's a motion on the floor by Councilor Johnson to close the meeting for discussion with relation to the purchase of a property related to our Savior Lutheran Church. It's supported by Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
The motion was if there was no other people to appear. I would like to make sure anybody else who's here, I see we have a gentleman in the audience, that he can appear before we close the meeting so that we can then re-adjourn the meeting and then continue with that point. So if that was what my motion was.
Okay, well, I thank you for that clarification. Sir, do you have anything you wanted to do to address the council at this particular time? Okay, before we close the meeting, please come forward. Thank you very much. And please state your name for the record. Welcome to the City Council meeting.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Michael Burke. I'm representing Riders Bar and Riders. All right. What we'd like to do is we'd like to see if we could section off the parking lot behind the Riders on the 1st of August for a party and have a band out there, like they did at what is it, Third Avenue or 3rd Street? No, 3rd Avenue, I think it is, in front of the 2 and 8 tap room.
318 Chestnut Street there, where the
we want to do it right behind Riders, or the
Okay.
parking lot right across from the city hall.
You want to do it in the parking lot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is this your first request for this? Have you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments with respect to that? There are issues that have to be addressed, but we could overcome those. I think as we discussed it, we've done this in the past. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think your first step is to put a plan in writing and then have a discussion with Britt and the police chief and the fire chief. That's usually been the protocol when, if my memory serves me, of having a somewhat of a written plan so that everybody's on the same page. But at this point, I don't see any, I don't have opposition to it, especially being in the parking lot. I think that's actually probably a little safer than having it on the street, but I would encourage you to.
Doesn't impede any traffic or anything, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the step, is to go work, submit a plan like we have done with 318 did. They just had done it so many times that we had a basic plan, and I think that would be the most prudent steps forward for you, and then we still have some time to approve I guess we'd be closing the alley and the parking lot. That would be the request.
August 1st. It's a Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, August 1st, yeah. And that's right. He would be closing the alley and in the parking lot for that day. Yeah. So if you, as Councilor Johnson's suggestion is in all of ours, is to put a plan together, work with our police chief and our city staff, put a plan together. They'll bring it to us, and we have plenty of time in which to take a look at it to make sure it's acceptable. But we really rely on our staff's recommendation moving forward. Our police, fire, and our staff can make those recommendations along with any necessary in-kind services that might come from Public Works as a result of this. So as Councilor Johnson's suggestion is, if you could put something together, meet with our city administrator, she can direct you to the appropriate level, and we can get that moving forward for you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just asked to come and find out what we needed to do to get this rolling.
So well, we look forward to you moving forward and discussing that and getting your festival available for August 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anybody else that from the public that'd like to speak before we ask everybody to vacate the meeting for a closed session? Seeing none, so it's been moved and supported to close the session, or to close this committee of the whole meeting for discussion regarding Our Savior's Lutheran Church. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Meeting is now closed.
Councilors Beyondich and Paulson, I'll call you right back.
Thank you, Brett.